Good evening all, and welcome. Many of you might have heard the horrors from the people of Walmart, so we're here tonight to share even more with you. Don't forget there is new daily content every day on this channel, so if you haven't subscribed already, please be sure to do so. For now, it's time to get comfortable. Don't forget to welcome our guest narrator tonight, Daughter of Darkness, and check out her links in the description and at the end of the video. And let the darkness take control. When I was 8 or 9, I had gone to our local Walmart with my grandpa to pick up groceries. While my grandpa was checking out, I asked him if I could go to the subway attached to the Walmart to buy a sub because I was hungry and didn't want to wait to eat at home. My grandpa, being the loving man he was, wanted me to be happy, so gave me some money and told me I could order myself while he finished paying for the groceries. The subway entrance was maybe 20 feet from where my grandpa was standing in line, so he could easily see me the whole time I walked over to order. I also want to mention that we lived in a very small and relatively safe town. Scary things didn't happen to people, and this lulled my grandpa and I into a false sense of security, trusting that I would be safe walking 20 feet to the subway alone. I don't blame my grandpa for anything. This was something that a lot of parents would have allowed their children to do. I quickly walked the short distance to Subway, thinking of all the stuff I was going to pile on top of my sub. I got up to the counter and noticed immediately that the only other people in the subway were 3 middle-aged men talking. I ignored them at first, not thinking anything could be wrong. After all, in my little kid brain, I had no reason to think strangers would be interested in me, even though my parents had given me stranger danger talks, which probably did end up helping me, or maybe even potentially saving my life. I ordered the sub with no problem and paid my money. The cashier was very uninterested in me, and looking back, I could tell she didn't want to deal with a kid, so she quickly made my sub, then disappeared into the back. I stood there alone for a moment, collecting my change and safely tucking it away in my pocket. I didn't notice the men until all 3 of them were standing right behind me. When I turned around, they caught me off guard. They were all smiling at me in a creepy way, and I instantly felt dread in my stomach and became very uncomfortable. Finally, one of the men spoke up, and in a thick accent said, "You are very beautiful. What is your name?" This scared me because I knew older strange men should not be asking my name or commenting on how I looked. Something in me told me to lie, so I said, "My name's Ashley." Needless to say, this is not my real name, and the other 2 men were standing behind him and just creepily smiling and staring at me the whole time, not saying a word. The same man that spoke the first time said, "Ah, Ashley. What a beautiful name. Do you want to come with us and have some fun?" All my alarm bells were ringing in my little kid brain. I panicked and started desperately looking around for my grandpa. I noticed him, still standing at the checkout line, oblivious to what was happening. The man took a step towards me, and I did the only thing I could think of. I ran. I ran faster than I ever have before and straight to my grandpa, and never looked behind me. So I don't know if the men tried to come after me or anything. Thankfully, I never saw them again. When I got to my grandpa, he was finishing up paying for the groceries, gave me a stern look for running through the store, as he probably thought I was just trying to be obnoxious. I suppose he didn't notice the men. I hurried my grandpa along, and we left the store safely and quickly. After we got home, I told my grandpa what happened. He was furious. He wanted to go back and report the men. I don't know if he ever did, but he wanted to beat the crap out of them. My grandpa was a big guy and strong for his age and probably could have taken them. So creepy middle-aged men who tried to get little girls to follow them. Let's not meet.
I'm a 19-year-old female, and due to being a competitive dancer in high school and getting a crazy infection in my hip when I was young, I sometimes need a cane to get around. It comes and goes, but during the time of this story, I was heavily relying on that cane. I had just gotten off of work for the day and got my paycheck, I decided I needed to go to Walmart to buy some snacks and get some necessities. I live pretty far outside the metro area, and it's a bit of a drive in, so whenever I do go to town, I tend to browse around for a while to make it worth my time. It was 9:30 p.m. by the time I got to the store, so it was pretty much deserted. I was looking for a movie in the video section when a guy came up behind me and said hello. That was no big deal, but he was standing so close, ignoring any personal space, that he gave me a weird vibe. So I just mumbled a quick, "Hi," and continued looking for a movie. I stepped away from my cart for a bit to look further down the aisle, when once again that guy came up behind me and said, "Hi," once more. I turned around to size him up. He was a good 6 inches taller than me and slightly overweight. I'm not easily intimidated, but given his size and my reliance on a cane, he'd have an easy win if there was a fight. Taking a step away from him, I responded, "Hello. How are you today? What are you looking for?" He was now standing between me and my cart at a very odd angle, as if trying to keep me away from it so I would talk to him longer. It was really weird. I said, "I'm fine, just picking out a movie." I tried to casually get back to my cart, but he sidestepped me and blocked the way again. "Do you watch anime?" I gave him a stupid look that should have made it clear that I did not want to be in this conversation. "No," I said. I turned away from him at that point to look at the movies, trying to end this weird interaction. "Do you want to watch it?" I muttered, "No, not really," without even turning around to face him. At that point I was thinking, if worse came to worse, I had my purse and my cane on me, so I could just walk away. But I also had a whole cart full of stuff that I didn't want to have to reshop for, and he was blocking my way to that cart. "Why not?" he asked. This time I turned to face him, no longer trying to keep the annoyance off my face. "Because I don't want to. Look, I've had a hard day at work, and I just want to go home and relax." "Oh, where do you work?" "At a grocery store." I was now mindlessly looking at the movies, acting like I wasn't trying to get past him to grab my cart and get out of there. "Is it around here? What hours do you work?" Okay, now I was done. I didn't respond and once again tried to grab my cart, but he kept blocking me. "Why won't you answer me?" he said. "Listen, buddy, I'm not into this. I want to go home, alone." He had a look of shock on his face, as if he were thinking, how can I be rude to such a nice guy? Wow, even when you're being rude, you're still so beautiful. Do you have any idea how beautiful you are? Yeah, I know. Now you're in the way of my cart. Please move. Now, is that how you respond to a compliment? He gives me a trying to be condescending, but in a sexy way look. No, it's how I respond to a fact. Fact, I'm beautiful. I know. I also know you're in the way of my cart. Please move. At that point, he glances down at my cane, which he'd been looking at almost as often as my chest this entire time. You know, if I were some creepy guy, I could point out right now that because you use a cane, you'd make a really easy target. But I'm not a creepy guy. Thank God for you. Right? Then he laughed, as if I would now see what a nice guy he was and how mean I was being to this knight in shining armor. I just looked at him. His total lack of self-awareness actually baffled me into silence for a moment. When I finally found my voice again, I said, "It's really creepy that you just said that. Normal people don't say things like that." He then reached out and put his arm around my waist, and I stumbled backwards trying to get away from him. He said, "Come on, don't be like that." I took another step back and said, "Don't you touch me. Don't you ever touch me." At that point, he attempted to get even closer to me, and in doing so, he left a small gap for me to squeeze through to go grab my cart. As I did that, this jackass tried to grab my cane away from me, and I totally lost it. I put one hand on my cart for balance, and I raised the cane over my head to hit him. "You are completely out of your mind if you think that's okay. Get away from me. Get away from me now," I said as he ran away. A female employee who must have been close by came over and asked if I was okay. I told her some creep was bothering me and that he tried to grab my cane, but that I was fine and I just wanted to check out and go home. She walked me to the front of the store, stood there with me while I went through checkout, then took me to the car so I wasn't alone. Then I drove home. So, to the guy who doesn't think it's creepy to grab someone's cane and touch them, let's not meet again, because next time, I will hit you.
My girlfriend and I had been dating for around 3 years, and I have never had an experience that was as close of a call as this time. We are mostly nocturnal creatures, especially when we're used to working the night shift at a factory together. To us, midnight used to be like noon, and we loved going out to the store around this time because we are usually the only 2 of 10 people in the place, including staff. One night a year or so ago, we were doing our normal Saturday evening shop at around midnight, when I got the strangest feeling, not even 5 minutes into our journey. It constantly felt like we were being followed, but every time I would look there'd be no one there. I eventually wrote this off as paranoia and started to have a good time and make an adventure out of the trip. We were finishing up on the non-grocery side of Walmart, taking the long, straightaway roads towards the groceries so we can get down to business on getting food. My girlfriend was telling me about her last attempts and statistics of her shiny hunt in Pokemon Ultra when I finally noticed him. I heard a slight clicking noise and looked back casually to see a man pushing a bicycle alongside him, walking a few steps back. It was brand new, like he had just pulled it off the rack as he walked past and was staring at me, and I got a bad feeling. I positioned myself on the other side of my girlfriend so that I was between him and her purse, which raised red flags to her. I told her to keep walking and act natural. A few minutes go by and the man makes a mad dash around a median chip display towards us, stopped dead when he saw we didn't flinch. Now, I'm not exactly a muscular guy, but I suppose my 6'4" stature made him nervous about what I was capable of, since I was wearing heavy winter clothing. I never broke eye contact until he turns around and walks back in the direction he was following us from and vanished. For about 30 minutes we shopped around, wondering if I was just being paranoid still, and we disregarded it as much. That is, until we were checking out. As I finished checking out the groceries and got ready to pay, I saw the same man on the bicycle with the front basket full of food and a woman's purse in his right hand, pedaling as hard as he could. An employee made an attempt to grab him but was too slow and he got away. Then we asked a nearby employee if we just saw what we think we did and told them about what happened with us, and they said they weren't allowed to tell us anything and threatened to charge us with trespassing if we didn't leave immediately. To this day, I have no idea if they ever caught the guy or got the purse back. We still joke about this, and her family says that it's possible I could have died if I fought back, but figure if he had a gun, he wouldn't have hesitated like when he did when he finally caught up to us.
This happened shortly before Christmas on a Friday afternoon. I was shopping at Walmart with a male friend of mine and my 2 young children. I absolutely loathe holiday crowds, and I wouldn't have even bothered leaving the house if we weren't at that eating ketchup sandwiches for dinner state of needing groceries. I was minding my own business with both of my children sitting in the cart My friend was a few aisles over taking a work call on his cell phone when my 5-year-old son started smiling over his shoulder at someone, and my 2.5-year-old daughter, who mostly speaks in fragments, said, "Creepy." I turned around to look, and there was a middle-aged man behind me, maybe 20 feet back, just staring at my daughter. Now, she is a really beautiful child, and people are always commenting on her looks, and they do talk to her. But this felt different. I instantly felt uneasy, and I left that aisle to get away from Mr. Creepy. My friend and I both have those bond bracelets that let you buzz the other person when you're thinking of them. So I gave him 3 buzzes in a row, which is our code for "call me." My friend showed up at my side just moments later, which helped to calm me down. I told him about the man who had been staring at my daughter, but because I was off my guard, I hadn't really looked at him closely, just enough to notice that his looks were rather nondescript. My friend looked at me and said, "Yeah, I kinda noticed him walking around behind you earlier when I left to take my call." Well, that did nothing to calm my nerves. My friend then commented that if we saw Mr. Creepy again, he'd tell the guy what was up. A little while later, we were walking through the refrigerated aisle when once again my toddler piped up. This time she said, "Santa." I turned around, and I kid you not, Mr. Creepy had gotten one of those Santa heads from the holiday aisle and put it on, and he was once again standing behind me. This time, though, he wasn't just staring, he was waving at both of my children. Completely freaked out now, I walked as fast as I could up to the checkout. My friend was so taken aback that he completely missed his chance to tell Mr. Creepy what was up. I found an empty lane at the checkout and started unloading my cart by practically throwing things onto the conveyor belt so we could get out of there faster. The cashier noticed how shaken I was, and she asked if I was okay. I told her about Mr. Creepy, and she asked if he was still around. My friend took a quick look and said, "Yeah, he's standing right over there by the exit." The cashier called a manager over. At that point, we just wanted to get out of there and go home. The manager walked over to the exit where Mr. Creepy had been standing, but he was no longer there. As a precaution, my friend and I took the children to the other exit on the opposite end of the store. But wouldn't you know it, Mr. Creepy was waiting for us outside that exit. He was once again trying to make eye contact with my 2-year-old. My friend, who had now found his moment, puffed up his chest to his full 6'5", 250-pound self and said, "Back off," which Mr. Creepy did immediately. As we ran to the car, the manager and 2 other employees went up to Mr. Creepy, and that was the last we saw of him. I threw the groceries in the trunk of the car while my friend buckled the kids into their car seats. It took me a little while to stop hyperventilating on the way home. It's a year later, and this incident is still on my mind almost every day. Honestly, Mr. Creepy could have been mentally ill. In that part of town by the Walmart, there's an outpatient hospital that treats patients with mental illnesses. Nonetheless, I'm glad my friend reacted the way he did, and I'm somewhat embarrassed at myself for not acting in a similar way sooner. I always brag about being an aggressive mama bear type when it comes to protecting my children, but the way that man approached me from behind caught me totally off guard and left me a little stunned. So, Mr. Creepy from the Walmart, let's not meet again.
This happened 19 years ago, when I was 19, and just moved into my first real house with roommates that I picked. We decided to head to Walmart to pick up some house things and whatnot. 6 of us go. It's myself plus 4 female roommates and 1 roommate's boyfriend called Daniel. We head to Walmart in my 98 Bronco 2, Jesus, the most badass vehicle to ever vehicle. We get there and start shopping in a perfectly normal fashion. I mean, we're being loud and obnoxious young adults, but that's normal. Now, for the story's sake, I need to let you know that I am a talker. I talk to everyone. I compliment strangers, say hello if we make eye contact while walking, that sort of thing. I will not say that I do not know a stranger because I am terribly shy when I'm alone, but when in a group, I am very outgoing and friendly, and that was my mistake this evening. We're 2 hours in, and we pass this dude probably our age, but no one can really tell. As I glance up, we make eye contact, so I feel obligated to say hello, and we all go about our merry way. Only, he went about our merry way. We are in this store for a solid 45 minutes, haven't even gotten halfway through, and he crosses our paths again. He walks up to me with his head down, like with his chin to his chest, sticks out his hand and says, "Here," then rushes away. It's his phone number. Aw man, that's super sweet. I feel bad having no intention of calling him, but it was a sweet gesture, or so I thought. It had now been the better part of 2 hours, going down every aisle discussing as adults what we do or do not need. We thought we were so grown. Let's discuss whether these trash bags are cost efficient before buying them in a group, all huddled up like adults do, and we cross paths with him once more. He stops in the middle of the aisle and just stares at us as we pass. I'm a little weirded out, and so is Daniel, the roomie's boyfriend, and he grabs my hand and starts acting like he's my boyfriend. The guy proceeds to follow us through the remainder of our journey. We get to the checkout. There are 5 girls, each with a full cart. Poor cashier. I know she was just done. And we see him 4 lanes away checking out with a soda. Daniel is getting uneasy and pissed off, so he grabs my waist and loudly shouts, "Let's go, babe," or some stuff like that. And we walk out. He walks out with us. We get to my car and begin loading things, and this guy goes to his car and just sits there staring. Daniel is now standing near the back of the car with a rubber mallet, just smacking it into his hand like he's a mobster, thinking it would make the guy leave. But it did not. We finish loading and pile in to head out. I turn my vehicle on, and the dude's vehicle starts as well. We pull out and head home normally until Daniel, who's been watching these headlights like a hawk, says, "Don't go home. Drive to the police station or a firehouse or something. That guy's been behind us since we left Walmart." All 5 of the 19-year-old girls he's in the car with start freaking out. The dude stays with us until we turn into a fire station, and he kept going, and we sat in the parking lot for a good 20 minutes to half hour looking to see if he'd come back. He didn't, and we head home. This event is why I haven't been back to Walmart since. I still talk to random strangers though. I can't help it. I really like people. But to the Walmart creep, let's not meet again.
As a 16-year-old girl, I visit Walmart a lot if I need something for school or just want to browse the makeup aisle, that sort of thing. I've never had a problem going shopping on my own. I actually prefer it that way. I never had any bad experiences either, until one day, a few months back. It was a Sunday. My parents were working and my brother was at a baseball game. I'd been home all day, and I needed to buy some shower gel and a new lanyard for school. The school I attend requires that we wear ID around our neck, so I needed a lanyard. I got to Walmart, and I went straight to the purse section where they sell the lanyards. I walked down the aisle, and I noticed there was a man there checking out the wallets on display, but I didn't think much of it. He was probably in his mid-50s, average height and weight, wearing jeans and a brown t-shirt. He looked just like any other grandpa. "Hi there," he said with a big grin. "Hi," I said, grinning back. "How are you today?" he said. Good. And you?" I said, still looking at the lanyards. "Great. I'm just doing some shopping today." I found it a little weird that he felt the need to tell me that he was shopping, because obviously he was. But I decided it was no big deal. I found a lanyard that I wanted, then I went over to another aisle to look for some shower gel. I was in no hurry to be anywhere, so I was leisurely walking up and down the aisle, looking at anything of interest. when that guy walked into the aisle and smiled at me again. At that point, he was starting to make me feel a little bit uneasy. This wasn't an aisle that was right next to the lanyards. He had to walk a good portion through the store to get to the aisle I was in for the shower gels. I've always been taught to trust my gut, and something just didn't feel right to me. This man seemed to be following me. I texted a friend of mine to tell her where I was and that I was being followed, just in case. But then I second-guessed myself, and I thought, maybe it was just a coincidence. I mean, he could be needing shower gel too. So I continued with my shopping. I went a few aisles over to look at some other stuff, and when I rounded the corner, I ran into this guy for the third time. "Excuse me, young lady, may I tell you something?" Yeah," I said with a quivering smile. "You are very beautiful." Thank you." I was so uncomfortable at that point. "Are you married?" Now keep in mind, I'm 16 years old, and look it, he knew darn well I wasn't married. "No, I'm not." "Me neither," he said, with a smile that absolutely turned my stomach. "Do you have a boyfriend?" he asked. Yeah," I stammered, trying to hide my fear. I don't have a boyfriend, but he didn't need to know that. He began to speak again, when a guy around 17 or 18 years old walked over and said, "Yeah, she does. She's with me." He gave me a big smile and stood really close to me as if he really was my boyfriend. "Oh, I figured," said the man. He seemed rather uncomfortable with the presence of another male around. "Well, good luck, you two." And with that, he walked away. I turned to the guy and I thanked him for coming to my rescue. He said he could tell by the tone in my voice and the look on my face that something was wrong, and he was hoping I would play along with him. He took me through the checkout and then walked me to my car to make sure that the guy wasn't following me. And when I drove home, I took a lot of false turns, just in case he was following me. I never saw either guy again. I still have no idea what that old man's intentions were, but sometimes you just know in your gut that something's wrong, and that day, I knew. There was something about him that was absolutely sinister. I'm so grateful that that other guy was there to help me out. But to the old man who was following me around Walmart, let's not ever meet again.
A few weeks ago, I was in Walmart with my gran. We were walking around and shopping for stuff, your normal Saturday morning errand run. While walking around, I had begun to notice an older man in his late 30s/early 40s, kind of scruffy clothing that looked like he'd been working in a few of the same aisles as my gran. I thought nothing of it since it's Walmart and it's not that big of a store. At one point, my grandma asks me if I need any new bras. For those of you who don't know, Walmart sells $3.98 bras and they're awesome. I told her yeah, sure, and we went to the ladies' underwear section of the store. My grandma went to look at bras, and I went to see if they had any matching underwear when I noticed the man again. I walked down to the sock aisle and didn't see him, so I slowly made my way back to where the thongs and stuff were. I was minding my own business when I heard someone walk behind me. I figured it was my gram, so I partially turned to ask how many pairs I could get, but she wasn't behind me. I looked around and see the guy at the end of the aisle. Whatever, maybe he has a wife or girlfriend, and I went back into my little world looking for underwear. I looked for another minute or so when I felt a presence behind me. I looked to my left and saw a little bit of my grandma, who was obscured by the rack, looking at nightgowns. I decided to stare straight ahead since maybe someone taller than me was just looking at underwear that was over my head, and felt some kind of press against me. Then I heard breathing. It was heavy, pleasure breathing, like someone was just calming down after finishing. I turned on my heels to see this guy who had been following me with his hands down his pants, obviously fondling himself. I literally screamed "Nanny," and the guy sprinted away. I told Walmart security and they told me they had no authority to do anything about it. I just can't get that sound of his breathing out of my head.
I was a cashier at Walmart for a little over a year. I quit in August of 2015 when I moved away to go to college. As a cashier, you see a lot of people every day, especially at Walmart. After a while, all the faces blend together. But there are some regulars that you begin to recognize. There was one guy who always wore the same Green Bay Packers hoodie and Chicago Cubs baseball cap. He would always seek out my line no matter how long the wait, just so he could stare at me, but he rarely ever said a word. Whenever he did say something to me, he would lean in and get right up in my face. It made me very uncomfortable. But if I ever asked anybody else about him, they all said he was a great guy. One of the cashiers even said he was a close family friend. So after that, I just dropped the issue. One night, I was working the 2 to 11 shift as a helper at the self-checkout. It was about 10:15, and I was counting the minutes until I could shut my line down and go home. As I was waiting for my shift to end, Mr. Green Bay Packer hoodie comes in and makes a beeline right for me. When I saw him come in, I got nervous. He walked up to me and said, "Can I buy a phone card in electronics?" I told him I was only a cashier at the front of the store, so I knew nothing about the other departments, but told him that he could go back and check for himself. He seemed really annoyed by that answer, but he walked away without saying a word. 10 minutes later, he came back up to me with a prepaid phone card, and he told me that there was nobody back at the register in electronics. So I activated the card and handed it back to him. I then told him to have a good night. But he got really upset and rather aggressively pushed the card right back at me without saying a word. I asked, "Is there something wrong?" To which he replied, "These minutes aren't on my phone yet, are they?" I was confused by the question. Of course these minutes weren't on his phone. He just now bought the card. I shook my head no, and he waved the card right in front of my face. "Why are you just standing there? Reactivate my phone!" He was so close I could smell his breath, and I was scared. I'm only 5'3", and this guy is at least 6'5", tall and stocky, and the thought crossed my mind that he could easily overpower me. I took the phone card back, and he slammed his cell phone down hard on the scanner. I tried to hide my nerves, but I was terrified. I had never put minutes on a prepaid phone before, but I didn't dare tell him that. He was angry enough already. So I read the directions, picked up his phone, and dialed the number that was listed. But as I was trying to top up, his phone went dead, and I didn't know what to do. I felt sick. I tried calling back, but it wouldn't connect. I meekly handed the phone back to him and said, "I'm sorry, something went wrong. I don't know what happened." He grabbed the phone out of my hand and tried to call someone, and when it didn't work, he looked at me with absolute fury in his eyes and said, "What did you do to my phone? You broke it." I nervously looked around, but no one was there to help me. He tried to make another call, and when that one didn't work either, he slammed the phone down hard on the scanner again. He leaned in and said in practically a whisper, "I don't know what you did to my phone, but you had better fix it." I was really afraid that he was going to put his hands on me. I tried calling a manager from my register, and I told him, "I've called someone who may be able to help you, but we're at a shift change right now, and it might be faster if you just went over to customer service." He picked up his phone off the scanner, still cursing me under his breath, saying that I had messed up his phone. I was praying to God that I could get out of there before he came back, or at the very least, get another person down at the self-check with me. 15 minutes went by and I didn't see him again. As I was starting to shut things down for the night, he came back and stood by the podium. He was still completely pissed off. He made that finger motion that means come here, without saying a word. And for some reason, that made me even more nervous than his yelling. I reluctantly walked over to him, and when I was standing in front of him, he leaned in so close to my face, I thought he was either gonna kiss me or bite me. I took a step back, but as I did, he took a step forward. A creepy grin came across his face and he said, "The girl up there fixed it. Simple fix. But next time, I expect you to know what you're doing. Understand?" I nodded my head, too scared to speak. He leaned in even closer and said, "I'm sorry I raised my voice. I never should have done that, especially to a pretty little girl like you." When he said that last part, he lightly used his fingertips to brush my bangs to the side. I took another step back, and he said, "Let me make it up to you. Let me buy you a drink." I shook my head no and said, No thank you. I'm only 19. And he said, "So we get a couple of beers and go back to my place." Again I shook my head no and said, "No, really, it's okay. I'm not much of a drinker, and I have an early morning tomorrow." He seemed very unhappy with that reply. "I'll tell you what. I'll wait over there by the door, just in case you change your mind." I gave him a weak smile and told him to have a nice night. When I saw him walk through the security thing at the door, I quickly shut down the registers, ran to find my manager and told her the whole thing. She looked at me like I was lying, and when I finished, she said, "Hey, I know that guy. He wouldn't hurt a fly. You're just being dramatic." She then turned to another older cashier behind her and said, "Teenagers." I asked if I could at least have someone walk me to my car, but she told me that the managers were in a meeting and the security guy had already gone home for the night. So I clocked out and went to the bathroom. I waited in there for a good 10 minutes before coming out and attempting to go to my car alone. When I walked out the door and around the corner, he wasn't sitting on the bench like I expected. I relaxed a little, until I realized that he was standing just beyond the door, smoking a cigarette. He had his back turned to me, though, and he didn't see me, so I went out the side door that only staff uses. I tried to shut the door very quietly so I wouldn't attract his attention. As I was quickly walking to the car, I heard him behind me shouting, "Hey, are you trying to avoid me? Come back here." I took off running, got in my car, locked the doors, and turned it on. By that point, he almost made it all the way to the car, and he was still yelling, saying he just wanted to talk. I took off as fast as I could. When I got home, I told my dad about the whole thing. He was so angry that nobody believed me or helped me that he called the store the next day to complain. But I was never contacted about the complaint at all, so nothing was ever done. But from that day on, whenever I saw that guy, I would either hide in the bathroom or temporarily shut down my line so he couldn't get in it. You often hear it said that the people of Walmart are trashy, but what they rarely mention is that there are a select few that are scary as hell.
About 6 years ago, my mum and I went to Walmart to get her meds. She gets home from work late, so we go over to Walmart at around 7. The parking lot is horribly underlit, as is the entrance to the store. As we're walking towards the entrance, a man walks towards me and pauses like he's going to start a conversation with me. He's wearing a cap, cargo shorts, and sneakers. I can't really make out any details of his face, but I'm fairly sure I didn't know him. My mum and I walk in and go to the pharmacy counter, which is right in the front of the store. I can now clearly see the guy. He looks to be in his late 20s/early 30s, is very dirty, and his eyes are very sunken in. He keeps staring at me and walking around where we are. As my mum is speaking with the pharmacist, I notice another man start walking with the first. This man is very heavy set with dark hair and glasses, and is far dirtier than the other man. The pharmacist needs a few more minutes to fill in the last script, so we sit and wait. I tell my mum about the men, and she tells me to stay near her. The guy is in the cap, mumbling loudly to himself, and keeps pacing behind me. I ask my mum for the truck keys so that I can wait outside for her. She says that being a little 17-year-old girl in a dark parking lot is a bad idea, even without two people following her. She sees that I'm uncomfortable and on the verge of tears, so she gets up and goes to talk to them. I'm her only child, so of course she's very protective of me. She walks over to the men, speaks to them for about 2 minutes, and they're far enough away that I can't hear what they're saying, but I can see how uncomfortable the men look. As my mum walks back to me, the men leave the store. I ask her what she said, and she just replied that she took care of it.
I'd like to thank Mortis Media for having me back again. This is collaboration number 5 for us, and it's always such fun working with him. If you'd like to continue the party with my family of darkness, hop on over to my channel. I'll be waiting for you. And as always, gatecrashers are welcome, as are hecklers. Hey, every village needs its idiots, so hecklers, please feel free to join in. You're an important part of the ecosystem here on YouTube, and don't let anybody tell you any differently. I believe in you. Besides, every single post, good or bad, helps me. So, thank you. And thank you again, Mortis. You're a star.